Live from the Heartland Mamas Studios, this is the Heartland Mamas Podcast. I'm your host, Heidi Henry. The Heartland Mamas Podcast can be heard on all podcast platforms, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, proudly part of the Demcast USA network. As of today, Super Bowl Sunday, we have 268 days left to save the USA from fascism. I hope you're doing everything you can, including inviting fellow Democrats over to watch the big game with you today, because we got to do everything we possibly can. There's no rest for the weary, and we are not weary. We are inspired. But today we're going to talk about professional sports and a little bit about collegiate sports, because I want to let you know that even though today's a huge day and TV commercials cost a lot of money on Super Bowl Sunday, the NFL makes $18.6 billion per year. But the net gain from all that money to any community is 1/20th of 1%. I want that to soak in. So that's not just the football stadium that's there. That's all the ancillary income from restaurants, bars, parking, transportation, all of that. 1/20th of 1% on average. And most economists think we should no longer subsidize professional or collegiate sports at all, because when we invest in those stadiums, we don't get a good return on our investment at all. In fact, it increases the use and pressure on infrastructure and traffic and EMS and fire and police, to the point where it becomes detrimental to any community to even have these teams at times. And we've seen it, we've seen it when it goes bad, right? We've all seen it. Some of us have been there when it goes off the rails. So I want you to think about it carefully, because here in Chicago, well, I live way out in Marseilles, but our Chicago sports teams always have this attitude that we, the people of Illinois, should, and they'll say, oh, the city or oh, the state, but it's we, the people of Illinois, should pay for their new stadiums, for the infrastructure for those stadiums. And we've watched the Chicago Bears manipulate the city of Chicago to the point where they put this big chrome and glass, it looks like a toilet bowl, inside of the facade for Soldier Field for an underperforming team, right? And every time we don't give the Chicago Bears exactly what they want, they go, we're moving. And then they put pressure on Arlington Heights recently and Naperville recently to take them in and support them. And both cities have finally looked at it and said, you know what? It's a big source of pride to have the Bears move out here, but we're going to lose money on this. Not only that, but we're going to snarl up our traffic. We're going to change the flavor and attitudes of our neighborhoods, and we're not sure we really want you guys here. So the Bears come back to Chicago and put tons of pressure on them. We want a dome stadium or we're leaving. Leave. Chicago's a huge market. Another team will come. I don't care about history, whatever. Disclaimer here, I don't really watch sports on TV. But there's a limited amount of time in my day, and I don't always have time to watch TV, period, much less invest my time into watching people play sports. Sometimes I'll watch the Olympics, those are fun. But because there's a lot of weird stuff you wouldn't see any other time. But those towns and the city of Chicago have finally gone, you know what, we're not spending any money on this. We're just not doing it anymore. And so the Bears have an underperforming team. We have a non-functional toilet bowl inside of Soldier Field. And it's a monstrosity to look at when you drive into the city. You see this big ugly thing. And the same thing when you come in on 55 into the city, you can look right down into, I can't remember what it's called. It's not called Comiskey anymore, but into the park the White Sox play in. And I've been in that park. No, I was in the old Comiskey Park a few times, not the U.S. Cellular Field. I've never been in there. But you can look right into it from the highway. And now they're like, this stadium is only less than 20 years old, but we need a brand new stadium because we can't fill the stadium we're in, and we have an underperforming team, but we want you, City of Chicago, to build us a new stadium just south of the Loop. The City of Chicago is like, yeah, right. They're not going to build, and I think it's Jerry Reinsdorf that owns the Sox. I'm not up on sports stuff, but I am up on the economics of it. Here's the thing. There's a lot of places in Chicago that need economic development that are further south that really need something to come in and kind of help it blossom. We could have put the casino down there. We could have put the Obama Center down there. We could have put White Sox, move the Bears down there. There's a great big beautiful area. Looks like hell right now because the steel mills were there. And I used to go down with my dad to pick up my older brother when he worked down there. And through the smoke and haze, you could see the beautiful lake right out there. Well, now those buildings are empty. It's like a desert. It's like a big, ugly desert right now. They could build stuff down there and still make money. In fact, they could get that land for a song. I don't see why we should have to pay for it. Because when these big, wealthy sport team owners come to the city of Chicago or the state of Illinois and say, we want you to do it, they're saying, you, the taxpayer, we want you to fund this bill. And it's going to bring all these jobs in. Well, the initial jobs for construction and deconstruction, because they have to deconstruct and clean up the sites first before they can build a new one, those jobs, those are good union jobs and they pay real money. But then those are replaced by the parking attendants and the people that make the popcorn and the people that clean the place and take care of things. Those are not living wage jobs. They should be, but they're not. And add to that the fact that there's a housing shortage in Chicago. And you have all these people that can't afford to live there. What are they supposed to do when you build just south of the Loop? One of the most expensive areas to live in the United States is the Loop in Chicago. And they want to put a stadium right there. Plus, the traffic is unbelievable. So we, the taxpayer, need to start, call our local representation and say, no, we're not spending money on that. We need to spend, tax increment financing, TIF, right? Every city has a TIF district. Even Marseilles has a TIF area. That TIF area would be better spent helping a developer build affordable housing instead of bringing a professional sports team to that area. And I realize there's a lot of pride saying home of the Bulls, home of the Bears, home of the Cubs, home of the White Sox, home of the Blackhawks. I realize there's a lot of pride in that, but the return on investment is really low compared to the amount of money, obscene amounts of money these guys make from their television shares, right? It's not so much the people that come into the stadium, it's how much money they get for putting it on TV and radio. And like in the case of the Chicago Cubs, you won't see them on TV unless you subscribe and pay for their channel. I don't think that's a real wise idea, but I'm not whoever those people are that run that. I think that's a bad idea. I don't think you're going to keep your fan base for very long. You're not going to attract new, younger people into it. So, and then with collegiate sports, here's the thing about that. They give scholarships away to people who excel at sports, not people who excel at academics. And once your collegiate career is over, I don't care if it's just in academics or if it's sports and academics, you better come away with a degree that's going to pay the bills. Because if you're just a mediocre student and you can't pay your bills on the other side, what good does it do you? And if you're investing just in your sports teams and not in your academics, it makes the cost go up for everybody. It costs more to go to school there because they have a great football team, whatever. We spend an obscene amount of money on college football. Obscene. Considering people go to school to get degrees to be able to become self-sufficient working adults that pay taxes. So, yeah, I get it. There's a little bit of pride in there. My son was a Saluki. My daughter's a Dragon, at her school. I get it. My daughter's school has a rugby team. I think that's kind of cool. But I don't think we should have to pay for that, right? That shouldn't affect her as a student if her school is a rugby team. So, but there's constant pressure from these billionaire owners for cities and states to foot the bill for their stadiums. Constant. It's constant. The pressure is enormous. Give us, or we're leaving. Well, you know what? Leave the city of Chicago. See how well that works for you, because Chicago is a huge market share. And even though the ancillary income for the restaurants and the bars and the parking attendants and whatever is only 1/20th of 1%. What happens is when they get a new stadium, either in a new city or new location in the same big city they're in, all those businesses that were around there die. They die. And then you have economic depression there. So instead of dealing with what they have, and I think in the case of both the current Bear Stadium and the current U.S. Cellular Field, we're talking stuff that's less than a couple decades old. And it's not going to work for you anymore. Why don't we have any more forward thinking so we can use those buildings longer? It seems like a lot of stuff that's going to go into the landfill because somebody else planned poorly. And for some reason, it's got to be on my back to pay for it. That's just wrong. Anyway, the city of Chicago has some real needs. Building a new stadium for the Bears or the White Sox is not it. Not it at all. So I'm just saying, I think it's a really poor idea. I think it's a poor use of TIF, tax increment financing. I think if you're going to use those TIF dollars for something, it should be on affordable housing. I realize, and now see, and the return on investment for there is much greater. Much greater. I mean, it's, like 68%, where you're talking about 1/20th of 1%. Why do we keep giving billionaires more stuff, more of our money? They have their own money. Let them do what they want with it. But I'm just saying that it's not just the city of Chicago that'll have to pay for it. And the city of Chicago's having a hard time collecting from the Bears for the last improvement they did. So I don't understand why that's even a thing. I don't think we should be doing that. So anyway, from the edge of the Great Red Divide, this has been the Heartland Mamas Podcast. I'm your host, Heidi Henry. Enjoy the game today. Take care now. Bye-bye.